Do you feel lonely even when surrounded by people? Do you find it difficult to articulate your spiritual awakening experience to others? Do you feel disconnected with the world, like no one really understands you? If so, this video is for you. In this video, I will share with you one key reason that we feel lonely in our spiritual awakening. There are many reasons why we could feel lonely, but there is one main reason that I'll share with you in a little bit. And in the later part of the video, I will also share how we can go about overcoming this feeling of loneliness. Hi, I'm Kang. I also been through a phase that I feel lonely in my spiritual journey. When I had my first spiritual awakening way back in December 2015, I was actually feeling rather happy and blissful. I started teaching tuition to kids and writing my books on the side. I was focused on my purpose, my calling, and not too focused on relationship. But then years later, I started feeling lonely. I noticed that the only people I was talking were to my immediate family members and my students during my one-to-one lesson with them. So I decided to meet some of my old friends and some new friends from social groups like Meetup. But what I realized was I was even more lonely meeting out with people than being alone. Solitude doesn't equate to loneliness. Here are some challenges you may also experience after your spiritual awakening. First, you may find it difficult to relate to people that you once were friends with. When I met out with my old friends, it was super awkward. I realized that our interests are no longer aligned. In the past, I was more empathetic and more willing to stay and listen to other people talk about their complaints and their gossip. But after spiritual awakening, I find it more difficult to pretend that I'm interested. My friend also didn't feel so comfortable sharing their opinions in front of me. On one hand, they didn't want me to feel bored. On the other hand, it's like I'm someone outside the group who is eavesdropping on their conversation. It feels so weird. I haven't met them ever since. You may find that once you're open to the spiritual dimension, other people with energy that doesn't match your newfound energy will just fade away from your life. You may also find it difficult to share your spiritual awakening with others because you don't feel like they understand or you're afraid that they might judge you. After that incident, I thought that maybe if I found new groups, I'll be more connected with them. But I realized something interesting. It always felt good in the beginning, but later there's something that makes me feel lonely again. For example, when I was in a group, the facilitator suggested we take turns to ask each other questions, and I was picked last. The next meeting, I was picked last again, and then after a few meetings later, we have a bigger group. The facilitator did something similar again, and this time around, I wasn't even picked at all. They picked each other again without even realizing that I wasn't even picked. I'm laughing right now because now I can see how insane my ego was. That is the moment I realized that the problem doesn't lie with not having supportive people. The problem is with my ego. My ego kept looking for situations so that it can retell the story of how invisible I am, how unlovable I am, and how much I don't belong in these groups. It brings me back to my childhood when I was an introverted boy and had low self-esteem. I didn't fit in and I didn't belong to any group. My ego is searching, and the more it searches, the more triggers it's going to find. When we feel lonely during spiritual awakening, it's not that there aren't other people who have gone through the same or similar experience as us. It's not that no one understands or cares about us. It's not that we are too deep or too spiritually awakened for the people around us. It's not that finding friends with the same type of energy is hard. It's not that losing our friends that makes us feel lonely. There is only one reason. It's because we are disconnected from the love that we truly are. We're disconnected from source. We're disconnected from this energy of bliss, joy, and connection that we once felt when we are spiritually awakened. And instead, we are listening to the old ego narrative of how separate we are from other people. We're still seeking external validation from others and afraid of not fitting in. In my book, Reconnect to Love, I mentioned how the ego builds this narrative and keep it intact. There are three key factors: the trigger, the belief, and the habit. In my example, my ego kept looking for triggers of me being overlooked or left out so that it can tell its story. Upon finding this trigger, it reactivates my belief that people are interested in me. All those feeling of loneliness and not good enough get reactivated again. This causes me to go back to the bad habit of withdrawing myself whenever I get hurt. And when I was closed off, people don't feel like I'm interested in having a conversation with them, and so they back off. And now my ego has more trigger to retell its narrative, and this cycle goes on and on and on. Now with this awareness and understanding of the mechanism, I can look at my ego and say, interesting. You're telling this story again. And so as to not continue the cycle. When we have a spiritual awakening, it's very tempting to conclude that because our friend and family doesn't have the same experience, they will not understand and they will not be supportive, or that everyone else will not understand too. But currently there's a shift in terms of the paradigm. More people are getting spiritually awakened right now. If you just go online, you'll find that many others have similar experiences as you. So don't just believe everything that your mind says, especially the story of disconnection. If you have been spiritually awakened before, you will know how good and connected it feels when you are in alignment with spirit. But when you are disconnected with spirit, that is where the loneliness comes. Watch this next video to learn how to not believe everything that your mind says. And if you want to find out more about how you can overcome your loneliness, you can read my book, Reconnect to Love. The link is in the video description below.